This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
All right, ready for this week's game?
Sort of. I have a bag full of loose sticks cards and a stack of loose pages over here somewhere.
Okay, I got a stack of notes, but they're kind of in three different books. But at least I have my character sheet. I copied it down on the back of this pizza menu.
So much stuff. Keeping those game notes organized is hard.
There's got to be a better way.
Oh, hey guys, what's up? Whoa, that is a lot of paper. Let me help you guys get this organized.
And with that, welcome to the 455th episode of the Misdirected Mark Podcast. Tonight we're going to discuss ways to organize and keep notes and other information during your tabletop role-playing games. Along the way, we'll take your suggestions, examples, and questions live from the chat room for life on Twitch. But first, my name is Jerry.
My name is Phil.
And I am Old Man Logan. Welcome again to the Misdirected Mark Podcast. It is time for our temperature check. Phil, how are you feeling?
Physically good, mentally solid, okay. Check.
Right.
Good enough.
Jerry.
How about you, Bob?
Or Jerry.
Either
Oh,
one.
awkward.
It's
How
all
about
right.
Jerry? Jerry, how about Jerry?
Jerry's doing fine. I actually got a vacation day in last week and actually took it. So I'm feeling good. I'm rested. Just, enjoying it. We got another day off this week, so it's going to be a nice short week.
Awesome. Cool.
You,
Cool.
Robert?
Yeah, Mr. Robert.
Do my Abed impression. Cool. I'm a solid okay. Physically, a little teeny bit of trouble with my neck last couple of days. It's been just a little cranky, but I have one of those neck pillows with the massager and the heat built in. So when it starts to get cranky now, I just lay back on that and let it get in the trouble spot. It hits it right into the major trouble spot that I usually have. So that usually helps.
That's
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's good. Mentally, feeling good. Tiny little bit sad today. Which I'll get
Which
into.
would lead us right into our one thing.
Yes, the one thing. Today I did a bittersweet revisit of an episode of Quantum Leap, specifically season 2, episode 22, entitled MIA. I watched this episode because I found out earlier this morning, that Dean Stockwell passed away. Dean Stockwell famously played Al Calavici, the observer on Quantum Leap. He was a great character. I loved the show. I loved him. And this particular episode was an Al-centric episode that was so many feels. And long story short, he spends most of the episode trying to get Sam to keep this woman, Beth, from hooking up with a new guy while her husband is missing in action in Vietnam. He's been missing for 2 years, and she's about giving up hope, and she's about to hook up with this lawyer and move on with her life. And it turns out that it's his wife, and he's trying to get Sam to do the thing you're not supposed to do, is change their own lives. And you get to the end of the episode, and he has this moment where he goes and spends a minute with her before they leap away. And it's so well written. It's so well acted by Dean Stockwell. It's great. Love the episode. And it was the first thing my mind went to when I heard he passed away. I'm like, I got to watch this episode. So thoroughly enjoyed the episode. Sad because he passed. So bittersweet day. Jerry, what do you got for one thing?
I'm rereading the Silhouette System. Last week, Phil was talking to us a little bit about coming up with some hard side games, and I decided to go back and look at Silhouette again, and I'd forgotten how much I enjoy it. This is the game system that DreamPod 9 uses for Heavy Gear, Gear Krieg, and Jovian Chronicles, and it's a 90s game, so it's got a lot of rules and modifiers, but most of the rules are just situational things like how does fire work, how does radiation work, stuff you can just ignore. And same thing with a lot of the modifiers. If you just run it as a straight game, the system still works, and I forgot how much fun it was just to look at the system and how it handles different scales at the same time. The fact that you can have encounters where you can have a romantic encounter, a dramatic encounter, a combat encounter, a giant space battle, and a tactical encounter all going on at the same time with the same set of rules, and not lose initiative and not lose the way the game integrates with itself. And so I liked it a lot. I forgot how much fun I enjoyed it. So I just been reading that, and I really haven't read a lot of games lately, so it's fun to get back into that. Phil?
Yeah, I've also been reading games lately, which leads me to my one thing for this week, which is we had a movie night at my place on Sunday instead of a game night. And we watched House of the Flying Daggers because we are studying up some wuxia. And I forgot I had seen House of the Flying Daggers years ago, I think when it first released. Bob, you said you didn't see it. I thought I had seen it.
It's entirely possible that we watched it, but it's been so long. I really didn't remember seeing any of it.
I mean, it was when I used to live above you. So, I mean, it was a long time ago. At least I thought it was. Anyway, regardless, we watched House of the Flying Daggers. I rather enjoyed it quite a bit.
Really good.
The true enemy of the whole thing is toxic masculinity. Was definitely the main enemy of that movie. But I mean, it's super pretty. It's got it's got some really, like, the use of color in it is fantastic. The fight scenes are amazing. It's like an onion or troll. Like, so there are layers, right? Like, the number of twists in that movie, like the number of reveals, you're just like, oh, like just one after the other. Anyway, it was quite enjoyable, and it was just, a bunch of us hanging out watching a movie at my place. So totally dug it. And I'm going to probably just watch a couple more wuxias to kind of school up for Hearts of Wulin.
If you haven't seen it yet, and this goes out to anybody, if you haven't seen it, Curse of the Golden Flower is
I have not
very
seen that.
visually
I've not seen it either.
Beautiful, stylized, wonderfully shot film. So yeah, I highly recommend that one too.
I'm looking right now.
Yeah. Cool. You want to do another movie night? That'd be excellent.
Sweet.
That was
anyway.
Yeah.
No, that was fun, but we have work to do.
Yes.
And first we have a big announcement. It's actually a Kickstarter I was actually very excited for a couple weeks. There were a couple of hints dropped about it. I had seen it. I had tagged it, on Kickstarter to alert me when the Kickstarter launched, and it launched today. So I was very excited to see Moonlight on Roseville Beach by Rich Ruane. You may or may not know this, but Rich is one of the royal court.
Mm-hmm.
What's Rich's title?
The Queen's Frog Ambassador.
I like it. The Frog Ambassador.
Yep.
I don't think we've had a Frog Ambassador before. Now, I know Rich from Metatopia. Rich actually sat in, I want to say it was Hydro Hackers, on a playtest of Hydro Hackers. Might have been a playtest for another game. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I take that back. It wasn't Hydro Hackers. Rich sat in on one of the first playtests for Turning Point.
Ah.
Ooh.
Along with Jason Cordova.
Cool.
Which was really the test flight to see if Turning Point was really going to work. So Rich is a awesome human game designer. And then if you want to up the ante, Rich assembled a writing team for the project. There are a number of people on that list that are awesome people. There are almost too many to list, which is why we're going to put the link in the show notes. We would be remiss not to mention probably one of the coolest people we know, Rob Abrazato.
Absolutely.
Is on that team, which, we love Rob. Rob handles our audio for us, which is just one of the many things Rob does
yes.
around here and elsewhere. in the gaming industry. So Rob is phenomenal. We love him. I'm super excited to see Rob on this Kickstarter as well. Catherine Rahman, who wrote Red Carnations on a Black Grave. Yep. Catherine Rahman's on that list as well. Like I said, you got to go jump into the Kickstarter and look at the list. It's really good. If you're wondering what the game's about, it is a queer game of disco and cosmic horror. That's like the label for it.
It's a hell of a pitch.
It's about spending. What's that?
That's a hell of a pitch.
Right?
Mhm.
It's about spending hot summer nights on Roseville Beach as you navigate summer, fun, romance, and things that should not be known. What initially drew me to this one, I love the tagline for it, right? Disco and cosmic horror. But what initially took me to this Kickstarter was Rich released a picture of the cover, and the cover is a throwback to the old pulp novel covers, especially the ones that were like queer stories and things like that, the kind of things that like you had to kind of go out of your way to buy to read, especially if you were queer, right? Like they were all these you see them all the time, like all these kind of queer pulp fiction kind of books. And Rich went for a cover that looks like it could have just been any one of those from the past. And as soon as I saw the cover and read what the game was about, I was like, I am 100% here for this game.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very excited. I backed it immediately this morning. They are doing some things with community copies, I believe. Right, Bob? I think.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's some things with community copies so that you can actually like make copies available for people. It looks great. It looks great, and I'm super excited. I was excited about this one for a while. I've had my eye on it when Rich posted the original thing. Here's the thing, though. When you're listening to this, because it will have dropped a week from now, there will only be 1 week left on the Kickstarter. This is a 14-day Kickstarter run. So by the time you are listening to this on your podcatcher, if anything I just said sounds exciting, you need to run to Kickstarter. Back this thing right away. There will only be a week left after you hear this episode.
Yep.
Cool.
All right.
Back it.
Yeah,
All right.
back it. I did.
I did too.
I did like right away. I was like, oh, click, boom, done. Yeah.
And you're right. That cover
Very excited.
is stunning. That is an amazing cover.
It's a really, it's really neat. And if you've ever seen those pulp covers for those kind of sexy novels, and there were a lot of those like sexy queer novels and things like that, it is like a direct throwback to those.
All right. Well, that is our lone announcement for the night. So that will bring us to the feature segment. Phil, take a sip, gird yourself.
Oh, okay. Hang on. I'm with you. Hang on. Okay. Whew, I don't even know what we're going to do. What we're going to do this about. Ready? Hit it.
That's all right. Go.
Workshop, information management. We got to keep our notes together. We got to know what's going on. We can't lose track of things that are going on. Otherwise, we're going to mess up our game, screw up continuity, ruin everything for everybody. We don't want to do that. We want to get it all right here in the workshop.
Don't suck.
Don't suck.
All right.
Ooh.
All right. Well, in our current Knights Black Agents game, we've been using this digital whiteboard called Miro. And it's done an amazing job at organizing our clues and allowing the group to visualize where investigation is going, and allows us to take notes as we go so everybody can kind of interact in real time. In some of the recent past, we had a listener, either to Misdirected Mark or Pandas, asked about how to manage a large number of NPCs for a game. So all of that coalesced to a large discussion about information management. This has to be seated well in Phil's wheelhouse, because he's someone who not only loves this topic, but has spent an awful lot of time on this topic and how it applies to RPGs. So get ready, because we're about to nerd out about getting your RPG data organized.
All right. I'm going to do the thing with the thing here. Oop, that's the wrong one. I hit the wrong button. There we go.
Behold! You are in the presence of Definition Panda.
Yeah, we've got just a little bit of definitions, not a lot tonight, but we're going to build up to our working definition for tonight. So let's just start with the word information, right? Knowledge obtained from investigation, study, or instruction. In RPG terms, information is knowledge about the game either proposed knowledge, such as like your prep, right? That's not actually things that have manifested. That's things that you might want to have happen. Or it's knowledge about the game that has been created, that is through play. Okay. Management is to exercise executive, administrative, and supervisory direction of something. So if we put that together, in our case, management of RPG information is then exercising executive, administrative, and supervisory direction of information about a game either proposed or created, which is really just a fancy way of saying we need to keep track of all the information about a game that's going to be used in the game or was created while we were playing the game. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Pretty simple. Straightforward for tonight.
All right. So information is a somewhat nebulous term, right? And in RPGs, there's plenty of information. So Jerry, can we get a list of different types of information that we may need to keep track of for these RPGs?
All right, sure. We'll start. Because there's a lot of types of information that are used in a game. We've created a list, and as always, this is neither exhaustive nor any sort of order. And some of the information that needs to be managed includes...
First one I've got is prep, right? The GM is responsible for prep in whatever form they prepare their games, right? This could just be a few notes about what they might want to have in a session, or it could be like a full detailed write-up with, box note, box text and stuff like that. Or it could be a prepared, or published adventure, or it could be a combination of all of those, right? It could be a published adventure that you've added material to, all of that stuff, right? But prep is definitely a type of information that we need to manage.
But the next is going to be in-session notes. And it's important that both the players and the GM take notes during the session. Not just the GM, but the players should be taking notes as they go too. Because this is information that comes up during the session because of play. It needs to be recorded for use the rest of the session, as well as for future sessions. And this could be anything from short notes, or it could be something like a character's journal. And I've seen games where players do both. I was lucky enough when I was in college to have two players who took meticulous notes, and at the end of every game would hand them to me with every name I dropped, every description I had. If I said somebody wore a purple flower, it was on that sheet.
That's awesome.
Yep. And it's nice to have those for everybody to use for later reference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
The next one is campaign notes. This one's for our GMs. This is all the additional information that you are keeping regarding the campaign. It may encompass some of the other items that we're about to talk about below, as well as things like notes about your setting, background information, a document that the name of which I cribbed from Fear the Boot, which is the What's Really Going On document. That is, to me, one of the most valuable documents I own in a game. All of that needs to be stored and managed. You don't always need this at the table. I don't in general, sometimes I need it, but really where I need it is when I'm in between sessions and I'm kind of working up ideas, prep, and things like that.
Yep. The next one is location. This can be part of the GM campaign notes, or it could be recorded by the characters. This information about specific locations in the campaign world, and it's likely the GM is going to have additional information about that location that's not been revealed to the players. But this is especially big if you have a campaign where you do a lot of leading questions where the players go to a town and walk into a bar, and the GM's letting the players kind of decide what's going on. It's important somebody's taking down those notes, like what about the bartender? How big is the room? What do they see in the corner? That sort of thing. It's all very helpful.
Sure. Events are another thing that you may need to keep track of, right? This may be part of the GM's campaign notes. It could be things recorded by characters. It's information about specific events, either involving the characters or not, right? It might be things that the characters did. It might be historical events or even parallel events that need to be kept track of. And we keep track of these kind of events because they have some sort of significance to the ongoing story.
Okay. The next one is items. Again, this is something that can be kept by the GM and the players, and this could be information about items in the game. This could be stats for a magic sword, or it could be a worksheet for the group starship. It's important because these items are going to have abilities that may be of use in play.
Yeah. House rules is another one. This is something that everyone's going to want access to. And it could be managed by anyone in the group. A lot of times this will just fall to the GM to manage. But this information is the collection of house rules that the group uses in the game. The amount and complexity of these house rules will be determined, well, by how much house ruling you did for the game, right? Like you may just have like a house rule, like we don't use experience points, we just level up after adventures. Or you might have like a whole bunch of rulings you've made in past games that have like gotten collected as a body of additional rules for the game. It's also something that tends to evolve over time. House rules a lot of times get added like during the course of a campaign. So this might be, small amount of information at the beginning might be much larger by the time you get to the end of the game.
Right, the next one's going to be maps. Because this one normally follows the GM, the players could be keeping their own maps as well. And this might be a collection of images or documents that detail the maps of the campaign setting itself. And they're good reference material and maybe needed during the session as well as for the GM between sessions for prep.
Yep. Next one's NPCs. This is another one that is both needed by players and GMs. This is information about the NPCs in the game. It could be as simple as a name, right? Like what's the name of that person who, owns that tavern? Or it could be a full stat block with background information, depending on, how relevant the NPC is in the game. GMs and players are going to have different needs when it comes to NPC information, and may have different, amounts of information they need to collect. Also, the amount of detail for an NPC is typically proportional to their role in the game, right? An inconsequential NPC tends to be just a line or two of information. A really major or important NPC might be like a full workup stat block background, like I said earlier.
And this is especially important when a background NPC suddenly becomes a major NPC due to the actions of the players, and the GM has to keep building that information up. Yep. The next one is ideas. The GM and players are both going to have ideas that need to be managed. Everything from upcoming stories, things to add to campaign materials, details about a character, memories that come up, that sort of thing. For the players, this is often things that they get to do in the game. Someone they're going to go see later on, an item to go get. So it's important to keep track of what these are and have them available for later on.
Yep. Lastly, your character sheet is a form of information. This is one's probably more for the players, unless you're, as a GM, you're rocking like, a GM PC or something that you've got, done out on a sheet. Character sheet is all the mechanical information. Depending on the sheet, might have some background information about your character. It is definitely something that you need during the session. It may be something you need between sessions, especially if you're like leveling up or trying to, look at like, what move am I going to pick when I get my next advance, that kind of thing.
When we played when Savage Sundays was still in full swing and we did our monthly game, we had players show up sometimes and who literally had what I was talking with Bob, where their character sheet was just the notes about their character and stats written, on the back and sideline of the last pizza menu they used, because they never took the time to get a good character sheet together and kept having to add to it. Organization is needed. But some of these things are going to get mixed together, and you might be putting names on NPCs on your in-session notes, or you might add item details to your character sheet. So depending on the game you're playing and how you choose to manage your information, some of these things are going to be discrete and some are going to be conglomerates of everybody.
Yeah, that's a lot of different types of information to keep track of in a game. Phil, what are some ways we can organize that?
Right. There's like we could make a list even longer than that of ways to store your information for your game. So what we did instead was we kind of just made some general categories, really broad categories, right? That we could bucket these different ways to manage your information into. And we'll get into each one of these buckets, and we'll give you a bunch of examples in each one of some of the things that we're talking about. As always, no specific order. For the sake of brevity, probably not a complete list, but I think we hit all the major ones. Jer, what's the first and worst way to manage your information?
Just keep it all in your head. The first category is people expect us to remember it. This is a terrible idea. Brains are generally terrible for remembering things. They're subject to imperfect memory, recall issues, fatigue, shutting down during emotional moments, etc., etc. And so while we say that, there are plenty of you who are keeping things for your games in your brains. And it's not the worst thing, but it's only at best a short-term solution until you can move to something better. So if it's important, I would say just avoid just remembering things without putting them down on paper or on a computer somewhere.
I shake my judgmental finger at many a player who keep all of their what happened in the last game or last previous sessions just in their head.
Yep.
Turns out to, as proven many a time, turns out to be a terrible storage system.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is pen and paper. And by that, we mean the general category of stationary and writing implements that are not electronic, right? These devices do not require any power or network connectivity. They have smaller storage capacity because, it's a notebook or some paper. Like there's a finite amount of pages as opposed to something digital, right? They don't have search functions, right? There's no way to quickly find, the word tavern on all the pages that you've handwritten. But they are fairly ubiquitous, right?
Yeah.
Writing implements, paper, like we can pretty much get our hands on it almost anywhere, much like the pizza menu, right?
Exactly.
We can go, and here's the thing about them. They can be very inexpensive, right?
Yes.
You can go hit up CVS in a September and spend like $1 on, big stick pens and, some loose leaf paper, spend like $2-3 and have a paper and pen system. Or you can go to my favorite place in the world, jetpens.com.
Yep.
Don't do it.
Cha-ching. No, we don't get any money for that. I wish. And you can go really luxurious, right? Like you can spend hundreds of dollars on a pen. You can spend serious bank on a writing journal. Like you have a range here, and it's a really wide range, which I think is actually really good because depending on where you are economically or how much you want to spend on your hobby, pen and paper offers you a lot of variety across a really wide range of cost. Now, it does require you to write things down. So it is in part dependent on your handwriting and more importantly, your ability to read your handwriting at some point later.
Yep.
This is the thing I suffer from a lot of times, right? Is like, I will write stuff down and later I'll be like, I think that's a word I recognize, but I was writing quick and things were exciting. And,
what the
also
hell is
I can't
that letter?
spell.
That's not a letter. That's hieroglyphics.
Yeah, that's like 3 letters mashed into some sort of like multi-letter. Okay, so here's some examples. Again, just a smattering of what is possible in this category. Index cards.
I love my dry erase index cards.
I love my dry erase. I love my paper index cards. Love. I am sorry for those in Europe who do not have ready access to index cards. I find them immensely useful.
Is that a thing?
Oh, it's a thing. There was a time where I was like on an index card bender years ago, and we got like a couple of emails and stuff from like Europe, like people in Italy and stuff like that. And they're like, what exactly? Like, they're like, we see these index cards, but you can't get them in the US. I wanted to airlift a whole bunch of index cards like to Europe. But anyway, I digress. Binders and folders, AKA the Trapper Keeper. My between 1980 and 1985, the number one way I stored all my role playing stuff, Trapper Keeper.
Never afford a Trapper Keeper back then. We never had one.
Notebooks, specialty books. Like, Bob, what was that Kickstarter we backed that had the book about the world builder?
Oh, World Builder notebooks. Yeah, they had,
So like there are specialty books. Like exactly. There's a I'm gonna not remember the name of it. because I have them somewhere. There's a brand of notebooks that has a D&D 5e character notebook. I will find it when we kick to the next section. Jerry starts talking, I'll go look it up. But there are specialty books that you can use, right? That are just not just plain notebooks. There is loose paper, right? Loose leaf printer paper. I was going to say typing paper, but printer paper, graph paper, whatever. There's cork boards, whiteboards, there's physical books, maps, there's printed character sheets. All of these things are in the realm of pen and paper.
All right. Now, once we jump past pen and paper, the next thing we can talk about is digital. And this category covers all the different devices that store digital information. Everything from a computer device, a desktop, a laptop, a tablet, a phone, a BlackBerry, whatever you got. BlackBerry. I knew you'd laugh at that one. Thing is, they require power, though most of them have a battery. They don't always have to have a power source on hand, though you do need to monitor and manage the power during the session. You have to make sure you got enough power to make it through the game. They've got a lot more storage and the ability to search for things. This makes information recall a lot easier. Sometimes they require internet access. They come in a range of prices, but the starting amount here is far greater than the low end of pen and paper. And of course, they're more delicate and fragile. But these days, most of us have something that's some sort of device. This is going to include your desktops and laptops, your tablets, your phones, your whiteboard apps, your cardboards like Trello, tablet and pen that you can write with, virtual tabletop devices, cloud storage, PDF rule books, all the character keepers that are out there. And one of my favorites, I love Word docs and sheets. Mm-hmm. We're going to get into this later on, but I love any role-playing game starting out with just a shared Google Doc that anybody can add information to as you go. Because different people remember different things. You can slap them all on there together. Yep. So I love all these things. I'll be honest, I held out doing digital for a long time, so I didn't like the idea of having a computer at the table. I liked old books because I'm an old schooler. Man, once I used them once, I love digital stuff.
It took me a little while to, and we'll talk about it later in the next section. It took me a little while to confidently cut over. Like, I wanted to do it for a while, and I would dabble with stuff, and then I finally got to a point where I was like, I think I can reliably keep an electronic device on my table now without it running out of power or screwing things up.
Yeah.
And today that's like ridiculously easier. Okay. The next one is pen to digital. This is a hybrid category. And what it is, and we'll talk about some examples in a second, but it's anything that allows you to convert pen and paper over to a digital medium, right? These solutions bridge the gap between some of the advantages of pen and paper along with the advantages of the digital solutions, right? This is literally the, you got my, your chocolate and my peanut butter kind of moment. Often, in almost all cases, these start as pen and paper solutions, and then you have a way to convert them into a digital format. So this includes things like Rocket Books. My personal favorite, and we'll talk about it when we get into our own systems, Microsoft Lens is one of my go-to applications for doing this. The camera on your phone, which is actually what Microsoft Lens uses, but it's a piece of software but you could just like literally take pictures of stuff on the table, right? And then things like optical character recognition. So things that like can actually take a picture and read the words off the picture. And if you have a newer iPhone, and I don't know if this is true for Android yet, you guys tell me, because I think you guys have Android phones. Yeah. The new version of iOS, if you take a picture of something that has words on it, you can tap the picture and the iPhone will translate all the words, and then you can like copy and paste them and do all that stuff with it.
I think they may have done that in one of the recent updates. I seem to recall something along those lines.
It's pretty slick, like, but it's a great way to do this like pen to digital solution.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that covers a lot of different ways that we can store information. Jerry, what are the reasons that we want to have a good information management solution?
Well, it's important because it's all about making information accessible so that we have it available at the right time. We have a couple different contexts to recall information, and each have different needs. So the big one is going to be during the session. We need to be able to access certain information while we're in the middle of a session. This is the most time-sensitive context we need information. We're off in the middle of running a game. We want to avoid dead air as well as maintain continuity. For instance, the characters teleport to the cleric's temple, and they want to ask the acolyte there for some information. Somebody at the table needs to be able to recall what that acolyte's name was. This recall can be tricky if the GM are involved in a bunch of other things or in the middle of a tense situation, or if it's just been a long time. We always talk about this, that sometimes players jump back to things that the GM isn't expecting this week. And so he might not have the acolyte's name on the tip of their tongue. And if one of the players just go, oh, yeah, that was, Bobo, the acolyte. Oh, yeah, Bobo, the acolyte. Yeah, he had a purple hat. And I think that, Grimnar here thought it was kind of cool that he had all those rings on his finger. Okay, great. We remember him now. Go on from there. But if the players have that available for them, it helps the GM and the players remember who this is. And also why they don't want to just kill him on sight. It's important for some players.
Yeah. The next context in which you need to worry about information management is between sessions. For the GM, you might be doing some of your campaign management, updating your campaign notes, things like that. You most likely are doing some session prep, right? Mm-hmm. Trying to figure out what to do next session. If you're a player, you might be thinking about what you're going to do next session, or you might be leveling up your character. You might be, maybe doing some research on some moves or feats or whatever. So in this context, you need access to different types of information, but you are not under the time crunch that you are during a game, right? We're not worried about the dead air, as they say in the radio, right? We're not worried about the dead air. But, if I'm working on my session prep and I suddenly can't remember, the name of Jerry's contact in Night's Black Agents, it's going to be kind of a pain. Like I may need to just look them up kind of thing, or, want to be able to grab that information from somewhere so that I can write it in, that kind of thing. Yeah. And, again, in terms of session prep, you're really just kind of looking up stuff, in part because you're worried about continuity, right? If I'm talking about Jerry's contact, I want to make sure I remember who's Jerry's contact, right? And the relevant information about them, so that when I bring it up, we don't jar the game where Jerry's like, that's not my contact. Or no, they don't own a tobacco shop. Remember, it's a bookshop. Oh, yep. Right. It's a bookshop, that kind of thing. Right. Yeah.
I'm going to add one more to this, and that's players comparing notes. It's important. Yeah. One of the things I like is when players compare notes, because sometimes people get things wrong. And if you have some way for the players to compare notes on what happened in this past session that we just did, and people look at it and go, well, we just grabbed this, we have to get it to the dragon so the dragon can, we can slay the dragon. No. We're supposed to help the dragon, not slay the dragon. I mean, that it sounds silly, but that's happened where 3 players think the adventure is one thing and somebody else heard something wrong, got the name wrong, maybe misinterpreted something, in the game. Where if you've got all this, then they can start planning and think about what's coming up next and avoid some difficult confusion, or build on that confusion if your players like to play on that kind of thing, but at least talk about it ahead of time to go from there. But I've seen that happen a lot when we've done between session notes where somebody realizes something that they either heard wrong or didn't catch at all when it went through the first time. Mm-hmm. So it's very important and cannot make for better role playing. And lastly, we're going to talk about after the game is done. Once you've finished your little one shot or your campaign or the story arc, it's important to have this available to go back and review. As a player, you might be looking back at past notes for inspiration, or the current game you're playing is related to the past one, what's going on. As a GM, you might be looking for inspiration, a past stat block, a map to reuse, a character hook to move on to. And in this case, like the one before, you tend to have time to do some searching, but the game's not current, so the location of this information might not be as easy to remember as it was when you were playing it. So having this information available afterwards is something that you can use to build on future adventures for both the players and the GM.
Exactly. All right, Phil. we've been slowly building our way up to this with all of the info we need to store, all the ways that we can do it, all the context in which we need it. How do we make a system that will work for us?
Rubbing my hands together here. Yes.
Those knuckles.
There's a hell of a lead up to get to this part, right? Seriously, if all we did tonight was just, tell you reasons why you needed to look up information or, different types of RPG information, we would be remiss in our duties. What we are really here for to finish out this segment is to talk about how to build one of these things. You probably already have one. You probably organically grew it when you started GMing or when you started playing. But you can also upgrade it, or you could tear it all down and start all over again, which is what we want to get into here, right? We want to talk through some of that thought process. The first thing I want you to keep in mind when we're talking about any information management system is you got to be excited to use it, right? David Allen, who, was a huge influence on me, the author of Getting Things Done, right? Very important book for me career-wise, said this about the Getting Things Done, when you were making your own Getting Things Done system. If you are not excited about the tools you are using, you will not want to use them, right? And take that one step further. If your tools are actually not exciting, but actually irritating, you definitely won't use them, right? So if your pen is uncomfortable, right? You got one of those like Bic stick pens and it's like, leaving that notch in your, in your finger when you're holding it too tight or whatever, or your pen like keeps running out of ink. Or you have the too thin lead in your pencil and it keeps breaking because, every time you push down, it snaps. Or the app that you want to capture all your information on crashes spontaneously over and over, right? Like during a game session, like you're not going to want to use it. Even if you made that part of your system, you'll just never use it. You'll go around it, or you just stop using it and stuff things back into your head. So as we go through the rest of this, I want you to keep that in mind. You got to be excited for your tools. If you are not excited for your tools and you have the means to do so, I'm going to say this. If you're not excited for your tools, shake it up. Find some new tools. If you have the means to purchase new tools, knock yourself out. But even honestly, switching from a pen that you don't like to another inexpensive pen that you do like maybe you got some pen at a conference, but it writes like a dream, right? And it just sits really nice in your hand. Use it, man. Like, you need to be excited about it. I know it may sound silly as I'm saying it, but I'm telling you that no system that you design is going to work unless you're excited about engaging.
Yep.
Okay. That said, we're going to talk about some ways to figure out what your ideal system is. We're going to go through just one kind of thought process to figure it out. That you could come at this from a bunch of different directions, but for the sake of finishing this episode in one night, we're going to lead you through one kind of chain of thought. And Jerry, take us on the first link of that chain.
All right. The first thing you want to do is you want to build a base system. And it has to address the following things. How are you going to get your information into the system? How will you store that information? And how are you going to organize it? And it needs to address these three contexts: during the game, between sessions, and when the game is over. You need to consider if you need to share this info with others or if it's just for yourself. Do you play in one place or different places? And do your tools need to be portable? Are you traveling by game in mass transit or in a car? Are you playing online? And does where you're playing have easy access to power or the internet? And you can have just one tool or a collection of tools, and you can mix and match physical, digital, and hybrid. And we're going to discuss ours after the break. But your base system could be just like the game you're about to play, or it could be when you run this type of game all the time, or basically any game you run. You can mix and match as you go. It's very important. As much as I love those Dry Erase index cards, they're great for in the game, but they're not great for, 3 days later when I'm trying to do something else. I've got to find a way to get that information back into a usable form. That's what we're talking about. Get your base system started and then think about what you're going to do next.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah, like I'm going to build a little off this before we jump to the next section. So like some of those questions, like about like, do you play at your place, or do you have to travel, and are you traveling on mass transit or by car, right? Like that's going to determine things like physical books, miniatures, battle mats, like some of those things, right? Like if you are traveling on the subway and you have like, a stack of, D&D books you need to bring, maybe you want something digital, right? Like I don't always want to haul my DCC book everywhere.
Nope.
Right. But I might want to have a tablet with my DCC rules on it, because that's easier, lighter to carry. If I'm traveling in my own car, I put whatever I want in my trunk, right? If I'm just driving to Bob's and I can just fill my trunk up with, a rolling file box, full of hardcover books and all that stuff, doesn't matter. Although Bob's got a pretty steep staircase, so maybe I'm not going to enjoy, dragging that thing up the staircase.
Yeah, that's the addendum to that one. It's like, yeah, I got a car, I'm driving, I can put whatever I want in that car, but then I got to get it out of the car and into the place where I'm going to play the game.
Yeah. And maybe Bob's neighbors won't like it when I roll it up the staircase, one, bang at a time going up the staircase.
Just getting it from the parking lot to the door at the bottom of Bob's stairs is a bit of a haul.
Yeah.
As somebody who helped Bob move several large, heavy boxes full of game stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So when, Jerry ran through all these questions, but there are things you need to consider. And I'll add another one in here is like, you're going to build your base system, but also if you run a lot of, if you go to a lot of conventions or went to a lot of conventions and are planning to go to more of them, then your system also needs to be convention hardy. Like, are you going to be able to get to your room? Like, do you have to drag this thing around with you all day? I have a couple pieces in mind we'll talk about in a little bit that are electronic that I kind of have to think carefully about if we're going to go to a convention, because I may not be able to get to a plug.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right, cool. All right. So that's like the base that Jerry talked about, the base system. I'm going to talk about next. After you have a base system, you're going to want to consider customizing the base system for the game you're playing, right? Your base system is like your 80% system, but certain games have different needs, right? So if we're playing Blades in the Dark, we need to keep track of all the faction ratings, right? What our relationship is with all those factions. Where are we keeping that? Are we doing it on a piece of paper that we're leaving on the table? Is it did I make it into a Google Sheet so that all the players can look it up on their phones while we're playing, or, can update it during the game, whatever. Our Knights Black Agents game, we are, doing this big mystery conspiracy thing, and that Miro whiteboard is invaluable. I don't think I honestly think the game would be a lot harder to keep track of all the information that's in that game if we didn't have it's a shared whiteboard, which is great. And it's like infinite in size, which is even better because when one mission's finished, we just move to another section and build out, another section of the board. And, but it's become a thing that in the game, everybody wants to be able to look at it while we're playing. Right. Okay. Finally, another example here, right? Your game may have abundance of maps. Like maybe you're playing something where you're constantly putting maps on the table. You need to figure out how you're going to organize them, right? Like which ones do you bring? Do you need to bring all of them? Like, is there a chance that players might go back to a place? You have to be able to pull that map back out. Are you prepping only specific maps? Remember the days, Bob, of gaming paper? Mm-hmm. They're still around, by the way. I don't want to make it sound like they're not around. We're just not playing games that use them. But I remember, Bob, you did it. I think I did it too, where I would take my gaming paper and draw out like the map for the scene and then cut it and put it like either roll it up and put it in a tube or in a folder or something, so that when we got to that particular scene, I could just put it on the table, or you could put it on the table.
Yep.
You did that, right?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I've done things ahead of time. Oh yeah, when I ran Village of Hamlet recently, well, not recently, like 5 years ago, I took the time to take those giant 3 foot by 3 foot pages and made full scale maps of the moat house and the tunnels underneath it, so we could play out the actual, because the moat house is an iconic scene. So it's always good to have that stuff, but you can't bring that with you if you're going to be traveling to conventions all the time. So depending on the convention.
I do remember just before, as I'm just drifting here before we jump back in. I do remember with gaming paper, we were playing 4E at Gen Con, and we we were playing just off the convention floor, and somebody we ran out of paper, and somebody ran onto the floor, bought a couple tubes from gaming paper. Or didn't they come by and give us some stuff once, Bob?
On a Sunday, the one day they came by and they're like, we got a whole bunch of stuff and we don't want to pack it up to take it back with us. Here, have some gaming paper.
Yeah, they gave us a couple rolls.
We have a question. What is gaming paper for the people that haven't seen it?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So gaming paper is this company. You can look them up. If you're familiar with battle mats, the 1-inch square mats, like the original battle mats, you got them from Chessex. They were vinyl. They worked with wet erase markers, and I had I think I had a small one and a really long. I had one that covered a whole table and one that covered just a quarter table, and they were nice, but you had to maintain them, you had to clean them or whatever. Gaming paper was essentially wrapping paper. It was like wrapping paper quality paper that had it was like a beige background with a 1-inch grid on it, and you just unrolled as much gaming paper as you needed and cut it and put it down on the table. Yep. And you could just draw on it with marker, because when you were done, you could just scrunch it up and throw it away.
Yep.
Or roll it back
it
up
came
and
in
save
rolls
it for another time.
Exactly. Yeah, it was inexpensive. The paper wasn't super thick. If you held it up to the light, you could see through it, right? It wasn't super high quality paper, but it was inexpensive, had a 1-inch grid on it. And boy, you could really deploy it pretty quickly.
Yep.
I liked my vinyl maps. They were fancy, but you did they were a pain in the ass. You had to actually clean them. You had to take a few minutes to wipe them down and get all the things off and dry them and stuff like that. But even in between games, you sometimes had to clean them a little bit more. Gaming paper was pretty awesome. Yeah, they had a hex option as well. I just was never a hex guy.
I'm not a hex guy. I'm big on. When I do in-person tabletop games that have any sort of tacticalness to them, I like things like that. And you guys have been to my house. I've got a 4-drawer file cabinet full of nothing but battle mats and dungeon geomorphs and things like that. I love that stuff. I don't use it as much anymore, but I love that stuff. But some games require it. Some games don't. You need to know that for your prep.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, yep.
All right, Jerry, tell us about GMing information systems.
All right. As a GM, you need to have lots of types of information that you need to store. And this system's likely going to be much more robust than what the players have to worry about. But the things you need to kind of prep for, I have no idea what that is how do you prepare your session notes ahead of time? How are you going to capture notes as the game progresses? And how do you want to arrange your campaign information? With the GM, you're going to have more books than the players, more materials like maps and things, cards. As you mentioned above, you need to look at the game you're running and think about what your specific needs are going to be. That's something that you need to look at. And digital has made that a lot easier these days. But if you're still a pen and paper person, you don't know what you're going to have with you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, player information systems tend to be a lot lighter. Players manage a lot less information than the GM overall, right? They manage their character and, they manage what's happened so far in the game. But consider how you want to record that information when you are playing a game. Mm-hmm. Do you need to look at it between games? Maybe you just need to see it right before the session to jog your memory, right? Maybe you just need to look at your notes, be like, right. Baron von Badass got away, right. Okay, yep, that's what we're doing. But also consider, do you need to keep track of any other handouts? Your character sheet's a handout. You're going to need to keep track of that. But do you have cheat sheets? Do you have, if you're playing a Forged in the Dark game, the ship, the neighborhood, there must be a ton of them in band of blades. There must be like a sheaf of
There's a
paperwork.
bunch of sheets, yeah.
Yeah, like you might need to be able to, you might need to, and you probably need to keep track of all of that as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. So once you have a system, don't be afraid to experiment. You need just to be exciting enough to want to use. If you find it getting stale, you might need to change up some tools, see what will work and what's exciting, what's not. And sometimes it's just kind of what's new and sexy this week. And try that out and see if you like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So cool. Like that's our general overview on information systems. In the next segment, after we take a break and check into the chat room, we're going to come back and talk about our systems, and kind of go into some detail about like how we do it and the tools we use and stuff like that. So this was all the theory. And when we come back from break, it's going to be the practical. But in order to get to that, Bob, tell us about another show on the Misdirected Mark Network.
Yeah, so I think you may have heard us mention before this show called Pandas Talking Games. Fine little show. Phil and Senda answer your questions about RPGs from the perspective of one-shots versus campaigns, or some other diametrically or not necessarily diametrically, but generally opposing viewpoints. There's always some panda silliness, or not sometimes. There's almost always some panda silliness. And Scuttlebutt on the internet says, if you listen to this show, you will love it. There may be something nefarious going on there. I'm not sure. Judge for yourself, but be careful. Mind your ear holes. You never know. Pandas Talking Games, kids. So, one of the things Andy mentioned along the lines of if you don't use it if you're not excited about it, right? If it's a problem for you, there's still an Obsidian portal out there with Andy's Ancient 4E campaign, and it was too much work to transfer their handwritten notes to digital, and I completely agree. There's a certain level of work involved where it's like, if I have to take and physically transcribe everything I've written into digital format, eventually I'm just going to be like, ugh, and it ain't happening.
Yep.
Totally.
That's where I think, and we'll talk about this in the next segment. That's where that paper to digital set of tools really start to pay off.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, Schmitty is in my house.
Yes.
So Schmitty, I think, just joined the chat room, but really Schmitty's only hearing a section of the show because Schmitty is just in the dining room having a bite to eat.
Welcome.
And dropping bottle caps on my floor. So that's the thing.
Yeah, Senda's saying, yeah, we need to update the show blurb.
Yeah, we do, because that's not really listen, we used to do one-shots and campaigns, but like 5 years later, like it's really hard to keep coming up with topics for it. Yeah. Now we just basically answer questions.
Yeah, that's why I try and mix it up and add a little more to it. But there's a couple of show blurbs that we probably need to update. But
yeah, we'll have to update that one. It's a little, it's on the older side. If you listen to it, you'll love it. That part's still true. Yes, that's still true.
And Mo Tusino completely agrees with you about cleaning your wet erase mats, because red or green, if you leave those on there, they could destroy a mat. Like once it's been on there for a certain amount of time, even if you use alcohol or cleaner, it's almost impossible to get those out after a certain amount of time.
Bob had the boss of game mats. It was a dry, I think it was a dry or wet erase mat.
Dry and wet.
But it had a magnet backing to it.
Yep.
So that all your magnetic things, like especially if you had the, Bob, what were those things?
Alea Tools.
The Alea Tools discs. Yeah. They would stick to the mat, which was really good, because if you've ever used those Alea Tool discs and you are fighting a lot of creatures in close combat and you get the poles wrong on them, it is hard to keep the creatures together. They will start pushing each other away.
Yeah, we had an instance one time where somebody went to move something and one magnet got too close to another magnet, and next thing you know, there was this explosion of and like a dozen magnets all stuck to each other and just grew into a big lifesaver roll and fell over and knocked over miniatures. And it was because I think we were using like one color as like goblins or something. Yep. One color was the bad guys, right? And then there were status effects for other colors, and next thing you know, it was it all like one bad placed thing, and it like we were just like, well, shit.
Yeah,
but that battle mat was nice because it was magnetic. So not only did I have the ability to draw the stuff on the battle mat itself, but I could just roll out a gaming paper mat or my hand cut cardstock maps that I had printed out and cut and put those down, and the magnets would still stick through. And so I could put pretty much anything I wanted out there and still use the magnets. It was good times.
The downside to it is it weighed like 6 pounds.
Yeah.
And it didn't roll up super tight either. Like it was like 7 or 8 inches.
3 inches, man. I think if we really worked at it, you could get it down to like 3 inches across. But that was fun. It was funny. Like it was, you didn't travel with it. You just took it to my house. Yeah. I think it's still there, by the way. We can go get it. I thought I pulled that.
Oh, maybe I gave it back to you. Maybe I told you to grab it.
I don't know. I'll have to check, but we'll find out.
I know where it is.
There, we know where it is. So it's not like it's going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere.
All right. That is our chat room for this segment. Let's jump back in. Mind the colors. I monkeyed with the format here just because of the nature of the questions and the way it was laid out. So I kind of
sounds
took control.
Good. Go
ahead. So in this segment, of course, we're going to continue our discussion about information management by hitting the roundtable for the following questions. Question number 1. What is your base GMing information management system?
These days, I start out with just Google Docs. I get a Google Doc started up, one for myself that's private, where I keep track of things like the ongoing game story, what's really happening, list of characters and events. But then I have one that's open to the players, and I start by adding all the stuff to it that I have and allow them to go in and keep track of it as a Dramatis Personae. The online Eberron game that I ran for about a year and a half that actually Spitty was part of, we did a session by session description of like who was met, what happened, little 1-sentence summaries of what happened in that game, because as we got 43 sessions in there, got to be a lot of things to go back to keep track of, kind of the story so far stuff. And I just find that with every game I'm in, I do a Google Doc that I start, even if nobody else wants to be part of it. I'll put it together for myself, just that while we're playing as a player, I can type in notes when the GM talks about trouble in North Tonawanda. I can write trouble in North Tonawanda with the Gilgore estate or whatever, and go from there. The next is I like to have a spreadsheet with just common enemy stats. If the game that has more than like 2 stats for an enemy, I'll make just a simple spreadsheet with enemy name, combat stats, basic skill stats, and a couple notes. And just go from there so that when the time comes, I've got that in front of me, so I don't have to go looking up books. I don't have to have stuff in front of me. I can just have the spreadsheet there. I always use index cards. I love dry erase cards, and I'm not sure which of the local GMs did this the first time, but might have been playing with you, Phil, when we did it for Fate. But I use it for all the games where if I bring like an NPC in and they say, well, you've met with, Bob comes in, I'll write, Bob on the card and toss it on the table. Said, okay, yeah, Bob is this person you guys just met. And maybe I'll put a couple notes on there and let the players add to it. A lot of companies these days make pre-generated character cards. I'm a big fan of Genesis, and they have a bunch. They've got to have like 15 sets now of collections of cards, like all different levels of like Star Wars villains, or all the monsters from Descent for fantasy. And you can go on to Drive-Thru Cards and order whole stacks of them for Savage Worlds. They've got whole encounters like, here's a goblin tribe, here's an entire Norse village or whatever with characters. And I like to have, if I'm going to need those, I'm going to have those available again for what to put down if the players decide to kind of wander about, especially if we're doing a between adventure session. And lastly, I just like to have a set of folders for loose pages, handouts. I like those accordion folders with the little like hair tie strap on the top, just so I can keep track of, like, here's all the character sheets, here are some notes, here are handouts if we're going to be meeting in person. And of course, if we're doing things online, a lot of this just ends up being digital at this point. But I normally start out with at least a Google Doc and a folder with my cards and notes and sheets and that kind of thing. And if I'm playing in person, I'll print out that spreadsheet ahead of time, especially if I'm going to a convention. Phil?
Okay. Cracks his knuckles. Here we go. All right. My platform of choice for digital notes is OneNote, Microsoft OneNote. I've been a fan of this since all the way back when I wrote Never Unprepared. And that has not gone away. I really like that OneNote is patterned after a binder. So I have a binder for all my campaigns. And every campaign I've run in probably the last 3 or 4 years, I have a separate tab for. And then inside that, you can have pages and you can have sub pages. So I have when I do my session prep, I have a page that has like session 4, all my session notes. And then I'll talk about like my in-game notes. I put in sub pages under that page so that all my session 4 stuff stays together. Now, what I really like about OneNote, and I actually like this over Google Docs, is OneNote allows me to put text wherever I want it. So I often have like a main column of text with all my notes in it with, different headers, bullets, and things like that. But then I will off to the side throw a stat block, throw a copy of a rule like that I needed to pull from the rule book because it'll be relevant in that scene, or extra descriptions, things like that. I will put those basically just to the right of my text so that when I'm running the game, I can see the text and then I can just like right over to the side. I've got whatever that supplemental information is. The other thing I really like about OneNote, and this is true for Google Docs as well, but I like this for OneNote. OneNote works on all my devices. When I am prepping my notes, I prep them at my desk on my computer. So I have OneNote up on on one of my big monitors, and I have my rule books and browsers for surfing for stuff on another monitor, right? And I'm writing my notes. When I go to run the game, I use my iPad, but I just open up that same OneNote notebook, and the information as I laid it out when I was on the computer is now present right on the iPad, and I don't need to bring the computer to the table. Right? I have a very simple, very minimalist iPad stand that I use to put it up on an angle so I can refer to the notes while I'm playing. And that's my go-to. The other thing I like about OneNote is it does work offline as well. So as long as I open and sync my notes someplace where there's Wi-Fi, I don't need Wi-Fi again while I'm using OneNote. If I write anything on it, which I don't, and I'll talk about that in a second, as soon as I get back to Wi-Fi, it would just sync back up to the notebook. Okay. All right. So then I also always open up a Google Drive folder, put the PDF of the rules, the character sheets, any digital maps, anything like that, all goes into Google Drive. Again, that makes it so that I can access it from anywhere. I have an app on my iPad for reading PDFs, Goodreader. So I will upload the game rules into Goodreader so that I have that accessible from my iPad as well. But if I'm at work and I have a minute or two to look something up, I can hit Google Drive from my phone, from my iPad, from my work machine, whatever. In game, I do not use electronics I don't sit there and try to type on my iPad. Typing on the iPad is incredibly inefficient. So during the game, I use index cards. I keep a stack of them in my jamming kit, and I just have a nice pencil that I bought from JetPens. Wasn't even that expensive. It's like $10 mechanical pencil, but it's really good. It's nearly impossible to break the lead on it. It has actually, like, it's from Japan. It has a couple mechanisms. Like, it has a shock absorber in the tip. So if you push too hard, the pen will kind of absorb some of that force. And if the lead is too long, it has this little telescoping support that comes down like a tube that like covers the lead so that it's not too long and exposed to break. So really hard to break the lead on it, which I like, because when I get excited, I press kind of hard and I will break weaker leads. But anyway, I write everything on index cards during my session notes. So like as soon as I sit down at the table, I take out an index card, I write on the top of it session 4, write the date, and I just jot notes as I'm playing. I use other index cards over to the side for tracking hit points and consumables and things like that. Those I just throw away. But I keep my index cards at the end of the session. Then I use Microsoft Lens to convert all of my index cards into like the stack of index cards that I take notes on for the night into a PDF. And Microsoft Lens will let you upload that PDF directly into OneNote. So at the end of a session, I think you guys have seen me do this. I will take out my phone. I will scan all my index cards front and back. I will turn them into straight black and white document, right? Take out all the color, up the contrast, turn it into a PDF, and send it right to the section of my campaign notebook for that game. And then I'll just take it, because it imports that PDF as a page into OneNote. And I will turn that into a subpage underneath that session. And this way, if, like it takes us a few sessions to run through, a given, given mission, I will have all of the index cards right there. And then that way, so the thing about it is, once it's uploaded, I can just throw the index cards away. I don't need them. And when I go back to do session prep, all of my notes that I took during the game are right there in OneNote. So, if I'm looking like, oh, what did we call that NPC? Oh, let me just go look. There's the index card. Read it right off the index card. Put it right into OneNote. I use Google Docs and Sheets for stuff that I want to share with the players. So, like in our Forbidden Lands campaign, we had a Google Doc. We had a Google Sheet we had a couple Google Sheets. We had a calendar. We had the sheet with our stronghold, and another sheet that had all of our NPCs in them. And that was something that I was using with the players. So we didn't always populate that during the game. Sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't. We played a lot online for a chunk of that game because we played during pandemic. So it was actually pretty easy to have it open while we were playing online. But I use Google Docs and Sheets for that sharing thing if I want to share things out with players electronically. And then lastly, I still rely on some folders. I always have cheat sheets. I am a person who, as a GM, who collects all of the character sheets at the end of a session. We rarely play anything that requires a lot of character prep, like character work to level up or anything. And I don't want to name names, Tony. Some people might forget their character sheet from session to session. That's a bigger hassle. So for me, it's just easier if at the end of a session, I collect all the character sheets, the table tents, put them all back in the folder, put them in with the rest of my stuff. That way I know where all that stuff is. I'm only slightly picking on Tony. Tony's not the only player I've ever had who's forgotten their character sheet.
No, he's not the only one who's ever done it. Yeah.
But Tony's definitely the person who's going to do it.
If somebody's going to do it, yeah.
I mean, we just like Tony's dice stay at my place. They're actually my dice. Like I have dice for Tony because that's not a thing Tony's going to remember to bring to the game consistently. So, but yeah, my system. So that system sounds complicated. It's not really that complicated. It is basically centered on OneNote. And the cool thing about it is like that OneNote now has all my past, it has so many of my past games in it now. Like all the Tales from the Loop stuff is in there. Masks is in there. And if they were short or long, like I did the Forbidden Lands was like 47 sessions. All that stuff is just in one tab in OneNote.
Yep.
And if we ever went back to it, super easy for me to go back to, after having played, we are probably going to go play that game again in the future. And all that stuff is out there digitally.
Yep.
To go back through.
Yep. Yeah. Back in the day.
I guess the other thing I should say is the reason why OneNote is still my, or why OneNote's my go-to. My handwriting is good in a pinch, like writing during a session, but not for prep. I type faster than I write. Typing is clearer, has spell check. Plus, nearly, I've reduced all of my notes to bullets. My notes look like more sparse than our show notes, right? Like I just have bullets for all my stuff. And for me, I can just do that really quickly in an electronic format. And it looks like it's good, like it's easy to read. I don't have to sit there in the middle of a session and be like, what was that I wrote? Like, what's that word? Like, no. It's fine when I'm translating the index cards at the end of a session, not like during a session.
Yeah. Back in the day when I was still GMing, I did like my 4E campaign. I did it all in OneNote. All my prep and all that stuff like that came out of OneNote for a lot of the same reasons that Phil used it. Not the smallest of which is I type faster than I write by a large margin. Like no contest.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's jump into question 2, which I'm going to propose and then answer immediately. What is your base player information management system? And for me, it's whatever character sheet for the game, and then OneNote. I do a lot of like brainstorming for characters and background information. I do that all in OneNote. So that's where I keep that stuff. As far as character sheets go, depending on which game it is and whether or not they have electronic character sheets or if we're playing online, that character sheet may be in Roll20, or it may be just a form fillable PDF that's in a folder on the internet. If it's a paper one, then it goes into Phil's folder most likely, because that's usually who's running the game. And then we go from there. So
now,
mine's nice and simple.
Do you use OneNote for like taking notes during a session?
I do not, because I'm terrible at taking notes during sessions. I'm one of those people that I keep whatever I can in my head from session to session. And quite honestly, I'm actually a fan of the fact that I may not get all of the information correct, because it's more realistic. You've got all these characters with all these different viewpoints and backgrounds and everything like that. And it's like, I heard him say, we need to go find, the vessel with the pestle. And Jerry's over there going, no, I have it written down here. We need to find the flagon with the dragon. Well, damn it. I guess I misheard him. But I don't have a problem with that personally. If another player at the table has a problem with me not taking notes, please bring it up. I'll listen to you and we'll talk about it. But so far it hasn't been a problem. And the inaccurate information to me is more realistic of an adventuring party where not everybody's going to remember the same things the same ways. So I just kind of go with it.
That's good.
What about you, Phil?
Yeah, my player information system tends to be index cards. I bring my normal gaming kit with me. I've got index cards in them, and I just take out an index card, start writing on it. I don't convert those. I think if I remember correctly, for Chris's Dungeon World game, I had like a half an inch stack of index cards from all the sessions. Some sessions I write a lot of stuff down. Like it depends on it depends on what's going on in the session. Like sometimes I take a lot of notes, sometimes I don't take too many. Occasionally I break my own rule on that, and I'll just grab a notebook and jot some notes. And I'll jot my character notes in that. Notes are for player stuff, my notes need to be enough that when I go back and read them, I'll remember what happened last session. Rarely do I have to do stuff in between sessions for the games that we play. But really, I'm writing the notes so that kind of like it's just enough to jog my memory. Like, let me just read a few things that happened here, right? We went down into the cavern, right? The metal spiders. Oh, yeah, right. I got it injected with a poison and recovered. Cool. Okay. And then the thing I will often do, past Phil will do for future Phil, and I actually do this in my GMing notes as well, is whatever I'm writing my notes on, the last thing I write on the note card or the notebook or whatever is the words next session. And then I write down what's going to happen. So if I'm GMing, my index card will say next session, players still in Stockholm, continuing investigation, whatever else. And if I'm playing, it'll be whatever the characters are going to do next. Like next session, explore abandoned control room, right? This is like past Phil's gift to future Phil. Like, hey, this is what I was thinking when the game ended. This is where you need to be when the game starts, right? So yeah. I will leave myself that next session thing, but I will also, when I do it like from a GMing point of view, like I will note things like if we're playing Fate, I will note, because sometimes we play shorter sessions, right? We don't always play like a 3-hour session. Sometimes we play like a 1.5 hour session or whatever. So I will note whether there's going to be a refresh or not, right? So I might just be like no refresh. And then I'll ask everybody for their Fate point totals and I'll write them down. Or if we're playing Knights Black Agents, I'll write down next session, refresh, refresh general pools, right? To remind myself to tell everybody to refresh when we get back.
Yep.
So I do a lot of those things. I do a lot of, now my GMing cards, I will see them when I go to prep. So I can just transfer that information to my notes. But my player one is really about reminding me, like when we sit down at the table next and the GM says, what do you want to do next? Like I already wrote it. Like, oh, we want to go into the control room. Yep. Because whatever we talked about at that moment was true. We should just keep going from there.
Yeah.
How about you, Jer?
As a player, I like to start with my character sheet, obviously, and then I like to get a digital copy of it. Even if it's something we're doing, in person, I'll take a picture of it, I'll scan it, something like that, so I have a copy of it. Sometimes I'll convert it over to a Word doc or a Google Doc or something. I like to have something I can go back to, just in case A, the GM loses it, or I lose it, or B, I just want to be able to look at it between sessions so I can take a look at what we want to do next. What is it that I'm doing well, not doing well, that sort of thing. I always have index cards to keep track of notes, to make table tens, toss things out on the table. I like a bound notebook to take notes in during the game that I'll then convert over to something else. I just go to the local Dollar Tree or whatever, and they've always got those composition notebooks there. If you're lucky, they sometimes have the ones that are graph paper instead of lined paper. And I'll have different notes for different books for different games I'm playing in a lot of times, just so I can have a place to keep track of things writing down, because I don't have a tablet that's easy to type on, and I absolutely loathe using my phone to take notes on. So I'll write things down and then convert it over to like a desktop or something on that later on. And then I will always try to get a Google Doc going, even if it's one, unless the Miro for Knights Black Agents is the same as the Google Doc, basically. It serves the same purpose, so I don't have one for that one. But it's that sort of thing. I like to have some sort of doc where I can keep track of names of characters, names of NPCs, places we've been, things we're doing, who we've met, especially as games get more complicated. This isn't for everything. We didn't do this for DCC because there's really not much continuity from adventure to adventure with DCC. But for other games, we've had huge Google Docs that we've kept track of, and they work really well. So that's generally what I like to do. I like to have some stuff. I'm a player that likes to take notes, even if they're not always accurate, and even if I can't always go back and read them. And as I got to GM a lot more things, I saw other players doing things, and I thought that it led to better games when the players had better notes. So I wanted to have better notes myself, so that when we do go back and talk to the hotel desk clerk in Stockholm, if we have to remember that's Inga, and last time we were here, they were, very helpful to us, or last time we were here, they were horrible to us. We know that kind of stuff and keep track of it. So I like those things.
Yeah, I left off index cards. I do actually have some on the table with me when I play. And even though I'm terrible at keeping notes, detailed long notes, like, no, that's not going to happen. But like, if there's like a little thing that I want to know about my character, I'll just, like, I typically have like one index card that's got 1 or 2 or 3 things on it when we get done with a campaign. Just like, I've got a couple of things, and depending on the campaign, I did have like 3 or 4 lines of stuff for Forbidden Lands for my character for that. So yeah, it all depends, but yeah, I definitely do keep index cards around too. So, because that's always a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on to question 3. What tools have you been curious about trying that are not in your base system?
So I have this Holy Grail notebook. It's this German notebook. Rotterfeden, I think, is the name of it.
I had to look it up.
Yeah, it's a beast. It's a $250 leather-bound notebook that has these metal arms that you can swing out and like put books in and close the arms back down on them. So if you've ever seen a traveler's notebook that has like the elastic bands where you stick the notebooks in them, this is like the awesome expensive version of that, right? Like, this is fancy stuff, and you can get yours custom made. So like, you can get one that like fits your tablet in it, along with, pens and notebooks and whatever. I would be tempted to make that like my base system if I was to kind of like go over the edge on it. It has been the thing where I have talked myself out of it, because it is even like $250 is just scratching the surface of what that system costs in its entirety. Like, once you buy notebooks and the customization, the shipping, and so it's like a Holy Grail thing. I don't even know if I really want it, because in truth, OneNote is the actual like optimal way for me to store stuff. But man, it's a heavy
investment for something that you don't know if you'll actually enjoy using until you actually sit down and use it. So it's like, if somebody could loan you one, and be like, here, let me play with this for like 6 months or whatever.
And I did a traveler's notebook system for a while, and I had some issues with it. I wasn't thrilled with stacking a bunch of notebooks in there and trying to write on them. And like, I wound up having a lot of things about it where I was kind of into it for a little while. I did a bunch of stuff with it, and then was like, it's one of those cases where you experiment, and I was like, I don't know. It's not as great as I thought it was going to be. And I eventually like scrapped, like I stockpiled all that stuff, which, by the way, if you're curious about getting into Traveler system, like, drop me a line, because I've got a leather cover and some notebooks and some other inserts and stuff I could probably trade or sell to you pretty cheap. It wasn't my gig in the end. But that is the notebook that, like, every now and then I see it on jet pens, and I'm like, oh. But you're so right. Like, the layout, and I mean, it's not a trivial amount of money to like then be like, I guess I'm not going to use this.
I mean, if like you had Bezos money, you'd be like, fuck it, I'm going to try it.
Yeah, exactly. Bezos money be no problem. But I got like Phil money, and like $400 is not a try. Yeah, $400 needs to be like a near home run, at least a triple.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. How about you, Jer?
I'd like to try some additional notebooks. I know that friend of the show, Glenn Seiler, uses some of these. I've seen him during the game where he takes notes that he can transfer over digitally.
Oh, that's the Rocket notebook, I think, is what he used to use.
I'd like to try that, and I think I need to get a better tablet. My tablet is actually half tablet, half like laptop.
Well, you have a Surface, right?
I have a Surface, yeah.
It's more computer than it is tablet.
Yeah. And so I don't have one that I can use easily during the game. I may have to actually bend and get an iPad one of these days and use that as a tablet, see if it works.
I will warn you. I will warn you about the iPad, that it is an entryway into that ecosystem. I got an iPad and then never got out. Like, yeah, they're perfectly fine Samsung tablets if you want to stay in your ecosystem.
Yeah.
There are some perfectly fine Samsung tablets that are probably less expensive than, or probably comparably expensive to the
Probably talking to some of you guys, but something that I can work on, preferably something that I can get a keyboard for occasionally, because I still hate typing on tablets.
Almost
I
every
don't
tablet
type on
has some
tablets
kind
either.
of keyboard attachment, a
Yeah.
Bluetooth keyboard, whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But I something that's simple and easy that I could put some PDFs and things on. It's like to use. I mean, everything most of what I need to do, I can do. Those are the two things I'm really kind of interested in. Bob?
Yeah, so I honestly haven't been very curious about new tools and stuff since TiddlyWiki, and Phil is making that face now.
Okay, so what is TiddlyWiki?
TiddlyWiki
was my core
stroke of
system.
Genius.
Yeah,
It was a stroke of genius.
It was my core system for like the early 2000s. Okay, so we all know what a wiki is, right? It's a editable like website. TiddlyWiki was this. It was an HTML page, wasn't it?
It was a single file, self-contained wiki that someone put together. Super small footprint until you start loading data into it. Obviously, it's going to get bigger because it's holding data. But it was a super small file that was a self-contained wiki, and it had add-ons. Like, it had an add-on ecosystem that people started to develop with different tools that you could put into it. And it was glorious. And it's still out there, Phil. It is still
I'm looking at it
chugging.
right now.
I looked it up like about a month or two ago for some reason. I don't even remember why. But it was glorious. And I used that for, what did I use that for? I used it for something. And it's TiddlyWiki, TiddlyWiki. Yep. It was the coolest thing since sliced bread. And there have been times when I toyed with the idea of going back to it again and using it for something. But like Phil said, OneNote right now is really doing all of the things that I want it to do. But yeah, that little TiddlyWiki file, it's like I had a campaign, and I had that file in a folder on my computer, and I just had a link to it in my browser. And it's like, anytime I wanted to do anything with that campaign, I just click that link, boom, it comes up in the browser, and you just do your thing.
I ran Iron Heroes on TiddlyWiki, and I had one wiki that had the campaign notebook. And then I had, I think, one TiddlyWiki. Oh, I had made a template TiddlyWiki, and I would copy that file for my session notes. So in a browser, I would just have I just have two tabs open.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man,
that was the campaign, Phil. I had my character in TiddlyWiki.
Yes.
I made a character TiddlyWiki for Kelvin, and had all the character information, all the background info, everything was in there.
It was glorious.
Oh yeah.
And it was relatively stable. Like you could pack a lot of information in that thing before it got squirrely.
I don't remember ever having it get squirrely on me unless it was like a broken add-on that didn't work right or something.
I had pushed a couple of them pretty. The campaign one on Iron Heroes got pretty large after a while, but it was so glorious. Now that you say that, like, as soon as you said it, I was like it all came flooding back to me. I had custom colored mine.
Oh yeah,
for Iron Heroes, and
you could modify the CSS rules and everything. Yeah, it was.
What was cool was it was at a time when. So that the period of time we're talking about is pre-tablet, pre-phone. Like, we all had phones, but no smartphones. So we were bringing laptops to the table, but you needed like a cool way to access everything. And this thing, like you just clicked on it and your browser opened and it was in your browser.
Yeah.
And it was fully editable. And, you know, you could put it on a stick.
Yep.
You could just have it on your hard drive. Like,
and that was the thing. I had it on a stick and I would take that stick to work with me. And so I could go and I could open up and work on my campaign stuff at work off of that USB stick.
My 128 titanium USB stick. My 128 gig titanium USB stick. Yep. Yeah. That was the thing.
That was the last piece of new tech that got me excited for information management.
It was, boy, it was a thing, man. Like I used it a lot. And as you're saying this right now, I'm like going through my, all my old, I'm going through my old RPG stuff right now, looking for that folder.
Yep.
Like my Iron Heroes folder. Just because I want to see it. Oh man, it was a thing. It was a real thing. Where the hell was that? Anyway.
Yep.
Oh, the Fate of El Hall. That's it.
We've gone into we've gone into nostalgia mode.
Yeah, we were losing Phil rapidly. He's going fast, and there's the folder.
That would probably be our clue to move on to the next segment. So, take us out, Jerry.
I
was going to say, so that's our discussion about information management systems for your games.
Oh man, we hope that you, as you are building out your system, whether you're upgrading it, whether you're like, oh, I got to scrap this thing and make a new system, whatever it is, we hope that this information has been helpful.
We're going to take one more trip to the chat room before we head off to the conversation corner. Apparently,
dude, I'm in it right now. November 5th, 2005 was the beginning of that campaign. So that campaign is 16 years old, dude.
Yep. 16 years old.
So in the chat room, we had Andy and Senda doing a long, beautiful rant on the court jester, repeating a lot of the back and forths that had, which is always excellent.
Well, yes, you uncorked that whole thing, so that's what you get.
Not me. I didn't uncork that one. That
I
was
cracked
Bob.
the seal on that.
Yeah.
Good times.
Oh,
sorry. Other than that, most of it's what we covered already. Lots of discussion of the battle mats, the Chessis battle mats. Mo has a whole filing cabinet just for characters in his game room, so we've all got them together. So, and I think that's everything there about the chat room.
Yeah, I think we're caught up on chat.
Not a rant, just a quote. Okay, I apologize. Not a rant, a quote off. So I've been corrected. That was not a rant; it was a quote off. But it was well worth reading.
All right, now that I've put Phil in nostalgia mode, let's do the conversation corner.
Yes.
All right, so since the last time we talked, I have continued watching Community. I'm about 4 or 5 episodes into season 4 already. Boy, I'll tell you, there's some interesting storylines going on in that.
I forgot what is going on in season 4.
The beginning of season 4, you've got, we're about to start our 4th year of community college, and that means it's our last year, and, we're going to graduate, and Abed doesn't like that idea. He wants everybody to stay together. You've got the whole, the fallout from, spoilers, the fallout from when Chang took over the school and almost blew it up.
Oh, dear.
And then he comes back calling himself Kevin, and he has Changnesia. I'm like, all right, well, we're gonna do that.
That's
then.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
The last 2 Halloween episodes have been interesting. It's that is a fun show. Thoroughly enjoying that. We had another episode of Star Trek Prodigy last week. Not everybody in the Slack room is. We opened up a Star Trek channel to talk about Star Trek stuff. And not everybody is super pleased with Prodigy yet. It's not hitting the right notes for some people. For me, personally, I have never been one of those people that will be like, this is not Star Trek enough for me. Defining what makes Star Trek, I am far more lax. Like if you're hitting the atmosphere and the visuals and you got starships and familiar alien species and tech and replicators and transporters, you're in Star Trek for me. Like I don't need to go super intensely deep to get to what makes Star Trek. I'm an easy to please person. So the Kelvin timeline stuff isn't a huge problem for me, other than the fact that the stories weren't that great in the second and third movies. But it was Star Trek to me because it was Star Trek. I can't really put my finger on, But Prodigy so far, I'm enjoying it. It's everything starts a little slow because you have to develop the characters and give you an idea of what's going on and everything like that. So, and the main, it's an ensemble cast, but the focal character of the first few episodes, Dal, he's an annoying kid. I mean, there's no two ways about it. He's an annoying kid. Thinks he knows it all, doesn't know enough, and makes poor decisions. But let's see how he grows, because if there's character growth there, then I'm good. So very, very interested to see where that's going to go. Started on the current season of Magnum PI about a week and a half ago. I'm like 4 episodes into that. Some more super deep, emotional, gut punchy episodes. They just did. I just watched. They did a suicide episode where a bunch of kids bullied this girl, and she killed herself. Content warning. I should have said. And they took it all super seriously. They had one of those disclaimers at the end where it's like, if you have felt like you want to do this, or someone, call the hotline. Like, this is all serious business. And I think they treated it very well. So yeah, I super love the people who are writing Magnum PI. They're doing a great job and telling some really interesting stories. We of course had movie night. We talked about that earlier. House of Flying Daggers. Whether or not I'd seen it before, who knows? But it was a very enjoyable movie. We already said super layered, a lot of stuff going on. I'm looking forward to watching a few more before we get started on the game, to really get into the flavor of the wuxia. So looking forward to that. And you know what this Friday is? The 12th of November. It's Disney Plus Day. And this Disney Plus Day promises to be packed with goodies for me specifically. And a bunch of you, I'm sure, would get something out of some portion of it. There's supposed to be big reveals for Star Wars, big reveals for the Marvel Universe. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. So I am super looking forward to Friday, because Friday is going to be just a wealth of fun stuff.
One of the things I heard, Shang-Chi is, I think, coming to Disney Plus.
Shang-Chi is dropping on Disney Plus on the 12th, yes.
And I heard that they are updating the apps, and the resolution of the movies are going to change.
Not all of them at the same time, but there's a huge chunk. Yeah.
Like the Marvel, like a bunch of the Marvel movies, right?
Yes, a huge chunk of the MCU movies are going to be updated to IMAX quality resolution. So,
yep.
Take that for what it is.
Yeah.
So, good times.
Plus, trailer for Obi-Wan is supposed to drop.
trailer for Obi-Wan theoretically is supposed to drop, and not just like a quick, like 2-3 minutes. Like they're supposed to give us like an extended look, like a 6-7 minute is the rumor I'm hearing. Theoretically, we're supposed to get a sizzle reel for Andor.
Nice.
What's the other one I'm thinking of? Mandalorian season 3, we're supposed to get something, I think, and potentially some other information, because the originally planned Rogue Squadron movie from Patty Jenkins was supposed to be sometime in 23. Has now been put on indefinite hold while they clean some things up because they want to do it right. And the replacement for that is supposed to be either an Old Republic movie or a High Republic movie. There's some debate about which one they think it's going to be. But
Cool.
Mo's asking what a sizzle reel is. A sizzle reel is basically just some quick images, maybe something with some dialogue, just to a short, like maybe 1 minute, maybe minute and a half. Here's some stuff from Andor to get you excited that the show is underway, and who knows what they're going to show us, but something to get you excited that the project is coming. How is it different from a trailer? It's usually not. Trailers usually have some coherent through line through some of the scenes, and they're usually longer. 2 to 3 minutes is a typical trailer.
Often has a lot of like out of character voiceover, kind of like the first half of the Black Adam trailer that dropped, where it was just The Rock talking about how much he enjoyed making the movie, and we had some cool special.
Yeah,
but that's going to be more
that
of a
kind of
sizzle
stuff
reel.
too. Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead. Yes, Mo. They're incoherent trailers.
Incoherent
yes.
trailers. Yeah. So looking forward to that. That's going to be fun. Plus, Schmitty's in town, so we're gonna hang out.
Yeah.
Yay!
Schmitty's right over there.
Yay! All right. What about you, Jerry?
I watched Star Trek Prodigy. I'm still on the fence. Cannot stand the main character at all, and I felt they took way too long to get that frickin' ship into space. The first episode was a 2-parter, and they should have been on that ship at the end of part 1, not part 2. But I also didn't like the first couple episodes of Disco, and now I love it. So I'm giving it some more time. But that main character's got to do something soon, because there's a lot of room for character growth, because they really can't go down. I don't like the main character at all. There's like nothing about that character I like at all. But we'll see what happens. I like the rest of the characters. I like all the supporting characters. I like the ship. I like Janeway. I like the villains, just not the main character. Still catching up on Psych and enjoying it. It's kind of, I watch a couple episodes a week. Just had to jump back into She-Ra. Probably catching up on She-Ra, and really liking. I love the secondary and tertiary characters in She-Ra. I love all the stories that have to do with Bo and Glimmer and Scorpia and Entrapta and all that. Just it's a lot of fun. Finished watching Fear Street Part 2, where the first Fear Street takes place in 1994. The second one takes place at a summer camp in 78, so it's got a lot of fun nostalgia, both music and also character stuff. And a lot of, again, just like the first one, a lot of characters didn't make it that I thought were, and vice versa. A lot of characters I thought were going to buy it did not, and it was interesting, topsy-turvy, and really did a good job of building on the mythos of the series. Really enjoyed the House of Flying Daggers. Not what I expected. Not knowing anything about it, I thought it was going to be another like Man with the Iron Fists kind of storyline, and it was not. It was a much deeper, much more melodramatic, a lot more focus on romance and things. Overall, just a great movie. Ended up buying one of the big Lego sets that's going to be setting the stage for probably a multi-day build. I decided to jump back into. I wanted something short to watch as kind of a palate cleanser. So I decided to go back and start watching Metalocalypse from season 1. They're like 8 to 11 minute episodes about the most popular heavy metal band on Earth and the fact that they are unknowingly bringing about the apocalypse. And it's just a lot of fun. And lastly, I was going through YouTube, and for free on YouTube with YouTube Prime Premium, Buckaroo Banzai, which I haven't seen in probably about 6 or 7 years. And as bizarre as that movie is, and understanding now that it was written by the guy who wrote Big Trouble in Little China makes a lot of sense. It's a pretty deep movie, especially since it's got a really good cast who, pardon me, despite the subject matter, takes the movie seriously, even when it's being a parody. And it's just got some fun world building, a lot of story stuff, and a lot of both parodies and homages at the same time. Banzai's whole group is very reminiscent of Doc Savage's team from the old Doc Savage pulp novels. There's a equivalent to Superman's Newsboy Brigade in it. There's also just fun with this. I mean, if you don't know what Buckaroo Banzai is, the main character is a martial arts neurosurgeon who also is a ace pilot scientist who builds interdimensional vehicles while also fronting a rock band. And it just gets a little bit more bizarre from there and has some very matter-of-fact stuff. But John Lithgow and Christopher Lloyd and Dan Hedaya as the three main villains just chew up the scenery left and right and take what they're given. So it's a lot of fun. I've forgotten how much fun that movie is. It is not a great movie, but it's a fun movie. And if you like sci-fi, if you like comic books, if you like pulp, if you like things like Doctor Who, Buckaroo Banzai is definitely in that same kind of category. So I enjoyed it. And I understand Bob has never seen it, so this may be a watch party sometime. Especially since it's free on YouTube. Phil?
Yeah. Well, I was supposed to have a vacation this week. I was last week, and Sunday was gonna come visit, but that all got canceled. So that was like a big downer for my week. I spent a good portion of my week, Wednesday sacked out on my couch. Eventually turned it around. So I didn't quite do a bunch of things. Like I really wasn't in the mood for playing too many video games. But I have continued my watch of The Good Place. I'm nearly done. I'm just a few episodes away from finishing it. That was a lot of fun. I've enjoyed that. I did, as a ray of sunshine on my dashed vacation, Narcos, Mexico season 3 dropped on Friday. And Saturday, I binged 6 hours of it. I have just a couple episodes left to finish. It's excellent. I've raved about Narcos before. If you're into it, you're into it. And if you're into it, you probably already are watching it. Narcos Mexico is excellent. It only makes me want to play Cartel more and more, with a thing that will eventually happen. I watched Star Trek Prodigy 2. I'm in the season 1, I will forgive a lot of stuff phase. I don't particularly love it. I don't particularly dislike it. I think it's a pretty interesting kid show. I like Hollow Janeway a bunch. So I'd like to see where this goes. It definitely won't be my favorite Trek. But I don't think this isn't a Trek that's made for me. I'm already on board and drinking all the Kool-Aid of Star Trek. I don't need a kid show to onboard me into this, into this world. Like, that's what this, like in the second episode, there's like a whole thing about like, what's the Federation, right? And this is clearly on-ramping younger audiences into Star Trek, which is good, because nowadays Star Trek is like a little impenetrable for younger audiences. So I like what they're attempting here. But again, it's not necessarily made for me, so I'm not really sweating it at this point. If I like it, I like it. And if not, it can just do its thing. It can do its thing, and maybe, hopefully it'll, hopefully it will onboard some new fans. Yep. So I'm down for that. We talked about the Wuxia movie night. I did play some Horizon Zero Dawn. man, that game is good. Like, I've still only barely scratched the surface of it. I know several of you are very excited for me to get deeper into the story to find out what's going on. But I had to go play all the side quests that they made available. Like, I was like, oh, I'm doing all the side quests before I before I move on to the next chunk of story. It's just a fun game. Like, I like the play style. I like the idea of hunting prey, and the skills that the skills you get and all that stuff. Plus, again, the game is gorgeous. Like, I really can't stress like how beautiful this game is visually. And honestly, I kind of think that at some point I would like this to be a role-playing game. Like, I'm honestly surprised in the rash of licensing that RPGs have been doing that somebody has not attempted, and maybe somebody has and I'm just not aware of it, that somebody hasn't made a run for this world. Like, this world is very evocative and I still barely know anything about it. I would be very interested to see what gaming in that setting would be like. So that'd be pretty cool. I don't know what else. Probably nothing major. This was kind of a meh week, having vacation plans dashed was really the kind of the wet blanket to it. I think I recovered nicely from it, but it could have been better. It was nice seeing you guys, and now I got Schmitty here for this week, so that'll be fun. Plus the Eternals, plus Thursday off. So we should we'll wind up having some fun. Anyway, that's me. Why don't we roll over to the patron shout outs and we'll make our way into the after show.
Yes.
Yep.
So thank you very much to patrons Jeff Stevens, Joe Rasso, John, MT Black, Mike Olson, Padme's Lover, Robert Dorgan, Ryan Bolter, and Troy Pitchelman. And thank you to everyone for listening tonight and being here in the Slack room.
Indeed, if you're here, if you're not here, if you're free on Tuesday evenings and would like to be here, so that's 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's time, come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with other listeners in the awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
If you can't make the live show, check out our podcast each week wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, take a listen to some of the other shows at the Misdirected Mark Network, such as They're a Super Geek, Mastering Dungeons, Bonestone Obsidian, The FM Gamers, Panda's Talking Games, The Gnome Cast, John Who Hustle, The Lounge, Bonus Experience, and of course, the excellent back episodes of She's a Super Geek. You can and should also check out our sibling podcasts, Tabletop Bellhop, Hey Mo, Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
Indeed. After you have set up your base system and before you have done all of your specific game configurations, leave us some feedback. You can reach us directly on the old-fashioned email, mmp@misdirectedmark.com. Hit us up on Twitter. The show and the network is at misdirectedmark. He's Robert M. Everson. He's GM Gerrymander, and I am DNA Phil.
If you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns and get your name called out on the show. MMP, Mastering Dungeons, and Panda's Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. Django Hustle is at patreon.com/Django Hustle, and Bonus Experience is at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. Patrons of MMP, Mastering Dungeons, and Panda's Talking Games get access to the after show, the pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Bamboo Lounge, and other special releases.
This has been a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. Mic drop.
We out.